Welcome everyone to the Incite Group's webinar on achieving seamless, timely and proactive customer service. Over the next 45 minutes we'll be discussing how to bridge gaps between departments and channels, how to truly understand your customers' support needs, react at the speed they expect, and how you can become more preemptive rather than purely responsive. My name's Jack Edgar, I'm the Project Director here at the Incite Group and I'll be hosting today's webinar. And the webinar actually forms part of the agenda for this year's Customer Service Summit taking place in New York on November 9th and 10th. The event brings together 200 plus senior customer service executives from some of the world's biggest brands, ultimately to discuss this year's most pressing challenges, priorities, many of which we're going to be covering in today's webinar. Before we get started with today's discussion, I just want to remind you that we are recording the webinar, so everyone will receive the recordings early on next week. We'll also like the webinar to be as interactive as possible. You'll have a couple of chances to get involved in a few anonymous polls taking place throughout the discussion, so please do be sure to vote on those. I'd also love to urge you to type in your own questions in the chat box. You can find that in the bottom right hand corner, so please do send through any thoughts, any questions that you have so we can tailor the insight to your challenges as much as possible. We're also using the hashtag InciteCS. You can see that in the top right hand corner of this screen. So again, any further questions, any ideas, any compliments you'd like to pay to the speakers, please do tweet away. So joining us today, I'm delighted to introduce firstly Mark Obee, the Global Head of Social and Community Care over at Intuit, Frankie Sortier, the former Head of Social Media Care at Cox Communications, who's actually very recently flown the nest, and she heads up Morningbrook Digital Consultancy, and Nabil Pike, the Senior Program Manager of Consumer, Social and Community Support over at Microsoft. Unfortunately, Marshall McKay and Jordan Fry from Netflix, who were originally meant to be joining us, were unable to join us at the last minute, but fortunately we have an abundance of experience and insight to tap into already. So welcome to the three of you. Now before we get started with the discussion and also our first poll, I wanted to let each of the speakers just introduce themselves to shed a little bit more light on their respective roles and companies. So coming over to you, Mark, first.
Thanks, Jack, so much for having me. As Jack mentioned, my name is Mark Obee. I run social and community care for Intuit's small business section, so most commonly known as QuickBooks, across that ecosystem worldwide.
Fantastic. And over to you, Frankie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is Frankie Soche, head of Morningbrook Digital Consultancy. I've got 20 years almost of experience with customer care and mass communications. 11 of those years were spent with Cox, 6 of which were heading up their social media customer care strategy, and then 2 of those also were e-care support chat. So very happy to be here and speak with you today about customer experience.
And I've already managed to pronounce your second name wrong, Frankie. I apologise for that already.
That's okay.
And finally, by no means least, Nabil.
Everybody, Jack, again, thanks for letting us participate. These are always both really educational for me, just hearing about other similar challenges, and also really cool to just share the work. So my name is Nabil Pike. I work at Microsoft in our social and community. I'm predominantly in the consumer support area, but interestingly enough, as Microsoft in the support arena, as we try to blend more of our audiences together, some of these natural barriers of like consumer versus commercial are breaking down. So we're actually learning a new way of engaging and optimizing our resources as a product of that. So that's kind of a cool and exciting time for us as we're going through the latest transformation in that respect.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Nabil. I thought a nice way to start before we actually go straight into the discussion would indeed be with our first poll. So we're just going to get that up. Just to a word of advice to the audience, you can only select one answer. We'll give you around about 15 seconds to do so. And the question actually surrounds the overriding theme and topic of today's discussion. So the question is, to what extent do you feel your company is providing truly seamless customer experiences across multiple channels and devices? To what extent do you feel your company is providing truly seamless customer experiences across multiple channels and devices? Just give you a few more seconds to put your answers through there. Please do vote and get involved. And we're just going to run over to the results now. And as you can see, the vast majority are indeed in the bottom two, so to some extent not at all. We do have 33% saying they are providing to a large extent some seamless experiences, so that's absolutely fantastic. But again, somewhat unsurprisingly, 64% saying that indeed improvement is needed in this regard. Coming to you, Mark, firstly, are you surprised by this somewhat, or in actual fact, is that kind of what you were expecting?
You know, I'm not that surprised, you know, from some of the previous events and hearing, you know, some of the challenges that people face. It is, you know, part of a journey and building up to that. So it's not something that happens overnight. So it's not terribly surprising to see, you know, the first two. What was a little surprising for me is completely. I'm really interested in that category because I think a lot of companies really haven't figured it out completely, and we're on that journey. But, you know, when you see 3% showing up incompletely, that's pretty surprising for me.
I was going to say, yeah, for the 3% who did answer completely, please drop me an email after. I would absolutely love to talk to you, and I'm sure everyone else would as well, so that's great. I'm going to come next to you, Frankie, and really just to kind of unpick the start of this question. What do you see as really the key reasons for companies wanting to develop and provide a more seamless experience, especially in relation to your social care?
So I think that there are probably maybe 4 key reasons that leaders at companies are really wanting to delve deeper into providing customer care. Number 1 is customers expect it. I remember in high school I used to call it all your friends are doing it, right? It's your basic peer pressure. But it's more than just about peer pressure. There's a lot of competition in the marketplace, and if you're not providing something that someone else is, like an easy way to transact your business, then that becomes a brand differentiator, right? But not in your favor, in your competitor's favor. And so then that comes to another segment of you want to be the brand differentiator, and when you reach out to meet people where they are to transact business, when you're listening to them, you're saying to them, your time matters to me. I care about where you are and what's important to you, and by extension, you matter. And then, you know, another thing I would say is that lifestyles today demand it. I was listening recently to an interview that Rochelle Carroll gave, who's the director of social servicing for USAA. She gave an example of a soldier who was deployed and being fired upon, who was trying to take 5 minutes to transact business with USAA in order to take care of some life-changing event that had happened. You know, USAA provides life insurance, health insurance, different things. And so to, you know, maybe it's not that extreme. Maybe you're on the subway or something trying to do your business, but really our lives today just sort of demand that. And then if that's not enough, which I think we all would agree that's enough, you know, we're starting to find that it's cheaper. So if we look not just at social media per se, but, you know, in the chat space, we're finding that chats are between $2 and $3 in some cases per interaction to get a chat done. Social, I'll tell you, some different companies are saying $3 per engagement, where calls historically are $5 to $7 per call, and your customers don't want to call you. So I think that those are 4 key reasons that if your executive C-suite is asking you, why should we provide social care, those are the 4 right there. Those are the top 4.
And certainly, as you point out, underpinning that is really the customer's expectation and the fact that it is, I suppose, the company's responsibility now to meet them in the channel that they expect and indeed at the speed that they expect. And certainly we'll come to that later on in the discussion. Coming to you, Nabil, I suppose, what are the important first steps that a company can take in their pursuit of generating more seamless customer experiences across devices and modalities?
Well, I think the first step in this is always understanding where are our customers trying to reach us. So oftentimes we try to anticipate customer behavior, but at the end of things, we need to be responsive where customers are reaching out to us. Pardon me. So I think having a good awareness of both the platforms, both the current common platforms and emerging ones, and really be listening even if you're not present there, to say Twitter, for example. Twitter, I think 10 years ago, very few companies were doing anything outside of the common phone and email channels. Now I think it is table stakes for any major brand or company, or especially emerging companies, to have a strong social media presence, and Twitter is really still the 800-pound gorilla of social media engagement. So understanding what your channels are and where you need to be will help you catalog and figure out how we can blend those. So you can't be seamless if you're not aware of the landscape.
And certainly you mentioned there the importance of perhaps going the next step being somewhat preemptive. Before we get to that, you got to know how the lay of the land and actually truly understand where your customer wants to be served, and then move from there. Coming back to you, Mark, in terms of the first steps that indeed you guys have taken over at Intuit in trying to generate a more seamless customer support experience over social, what would you say are the first few steps you need to take, and I suppose the first few barriers to get over as well?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, and one of the things we've really found was really understanding the entire end-to-end customer experience. So it took some time to kind of map that out on a massive whiteboard. I think it was probably one of the, we had to do a panorama picture to capture the entire to the entire experience we built out, because there's, as Nabil mentions, there's so many different ways, you know, the customers want to connect with us, and you know, really kind of defining, you know, where are those gaps, the strengths you have in the company, and then as you start, you know, really building out a priority-driven roadmap. I think one of the challenges that a lot of companies face is immediately they go into this pressure of, let's go ahead, we need a Facebook, we need a Twitter account, we need an Instagram account, but, you know, really stopping and understanding those critical few of where do you really show up as a brand and how you can make the most impact. Because if you have limited resources, driving 3 channels at the same time is not really as effective as really kind of leaning into 2 and doing them well.
As you pointed out, so really making sure that you do have an understanding of that customer journey, that customer experience. And I love the highly technical approach you use there, just a big old whiteboard to map that one out, Mark. Coming over to you, Frankie, in terms of, I suppose, generating a more integrated internal approach with the view of having a more seamless external approach, which departments should social care be working closely with in order to have a more integrated infrastructure internally?
So my answer to that is going to be, it depends, but I'll explain more about it later. But I think it depends on what your customers are asking you, what your customers are looking for you. It comes back to knowing your customer. So, for example, 1-800-PET-MEDS, I was listening to something that they had talked about their structure the other day, and to them, it's very important to be tied directly into the veterinary pharmacists, right? Because if they get certain questions and they need to be answered, so that's specific to their line of business. So you definitely have to know, what am I offering and what do my customers tend to ask me on social media, and then how do I need to get those answers. And it also depends too on what is your charter for your social customer care team, the folks that are answering. If you have signed up to answer only customer queries around orders or something like that, then I would suggest that your public affairs department and your marketing department be your main lines of contact, because what you want to know is, first, I always told my team at Cox, first let's understand, should I answer this person's question? And if I should answer this person's question, how should I answer it? What's the answer that the company would like for me to give? What's the most helpful information? So certainly public affairs, certainly marketing, and then any other departments that are very specific to, you know, if you're a technology company, maybe you need to have products very involved, or, you know, those different streamlines like that. But you definitely want those folks on speed dial.
I mean, it's probably unsurprising to hear again, firstly, public affairs and marketing and trying to heighten that interaction, that collaboration with those departments internally. And it's certainly been a challenge for many companies over the last couple of years, and I'm sure it will continue to be over the next few years as well. Silos seem to be the cockroach of, of many companies' infrastructures. Just coming over to you, Mark, I mean, I suppose, if it is difficult to break down those internal silos, I mean, is it completely necessary to have a fully integrated infrastructure internally to be able to create those seamless integrated experience externally, or can you get away with perhaps not de-siloing as much internally as one might expect?
It's a great question. You know, I suppose you can drive separate experiences, you know, successfully with high levels of communication. But I think when you really get down to the experience, and integrated experience overall will build deeper visibility into what you're trying to solve for, as well as it eases that difficulty of communication. When you're on the same path, when you're integrated in a way that you have that trust and that communication between you know, the different departments, you're able to really, you know, go beyond, you know, having to have, you know, 30 phone calls to be able to solve one campaign. You can get down to the heart of it, where you have that deep infrastructure built in, where you know when a new experience comes or a big challenge comes, you're able to take that on in a quick and easy way. You know, at Intuit, we really build a lot of our experiences on the same tool sets. I think that's been one of the successes we've had. You know, we have the same listening tools, the engagement tools, and it's really helped, you know, build that visibility into the content, the engagement, as well as the overall sentiment in the social space.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Mark. We're actually getting a few questions coming through the chat box, which is absolutely great. I'd like to take this moment to emphasize, please do send through your questions as soon as you have them. Don't wait until the end. We're going to be integrating them as we go. And in the spirit of that, I'm actually going to integrate our first question. It actually is related to, I suppose, the relationship that the care operations and social care has with marketing. I'm going to come over to you, Nabil, and it relates to real-time service interactions. Who owns the right for those, and how does that relationship work over at Microsoft?
Good question. So I think there's the element of politics and there's ideology, and depending on your company's environment, you are probably going to have to contend with both. I think at Microsoft we treat it as a shared ownership, and then we align on objectives and goals. That seems to be the most effective way that we've been able to move forward well. Otherwise, I think you get into the infighting, especially at a larger company like Microsoft, where marketing says, well, they're my customer, I own, and this is what I want to talk to them about and how I want to talk to them. And then from the standpoint of a service-based organization, such as support and customer care like ours, we say, well, of course we own the customer, and we want to be here and available for them with whatever they need. So admitting that multiple people may feel connected or have a stake in these customer interactions is a good first step, and then just corralling the small group of people that are going to have that interaction with them together and agree on kind of the rules of the road. That's been very effective. So predominantly marketing and support are the two engagement points where we think of the customer connection, especially on social and community, and we've just aligned and said, hey, these are the conversations that are happening. These are how we think we want to actually be responding in the overall tone and demeanor that we want to have with our customers. And then on everything else, we partner pretty closely together in terms of messaging, and in cases where we have separate organizations involved, we have found that you just really need to have a really clear and open escalation and communication path on the back end, so we can move things around for the customer quickly and not sort of make them suffer through our org chart just to get assistance or a question answered.
Fantastic. And in actual fact, Nabil, we just had a question through from Katie Campos, who is, I suppose, wanting a little bit more detail on what you just mentioned there. And her question is, how do your teams separate out what the social customer care team responds to versus what the community managers respond to and engage with?
Well, I don't think you have to. A lot of it is technology dependent, in my opinion. if your capability is to have a blended team, then you're no longer actually having to make that decision of, okay, what channel am I replying to, or how am I managing, from an operational perspective, managing training for multiple groups of people. So I'll use our Twitter handle as a good example. We have a couple major entry points in Twitter that are pretty well published. One from the standpoint of one of our major brands, at Windows. We know we get a lot of mentions. We know we get a lot of direct posts to the at Windows handle. And by looking at the traffic on that, we basically did a catalog and said, these are the things that people are coming to us for. We found as much as 50+% of traffic on the at Windows handle is care and service related. So we knew early on that for us to be effective with helping customers in that channel, we had to have really good integration and some cross-training as well. So what we did was basically say, here's how through our tool, and internally to Microsoft, we actually use Sprinkler as our engagement tool on social media. I know many of you may use that or other ones as well. This is how we're going to parse it. These are things that we're going to pass over directly to the agents, to our support and care agents, and these are the things that we're going to cross-train on because these are simple things that everybody should know. So we think about that. What is that 80-20 rule of solving the customer's issue? So if we don't have to move them between teams, it actually increases our speed of response, and we think generates a better experience even when we're moving them sort of seamlessly on the back end, at least from the customer's perspective. Hope that answers the question.
No, I think it does, and in actual fact, either your answer, Nabil, or indeed Katie's question has sparked a flood of further questions, which is fantastic. So we're gonna make our way through those, as quickly as possible. Just quickly before we do, I just want to come over to you, Mark, and just get a view on really, I suppose, how the lie of the land looks at Intuit. I mean, who does own the right for real-time service interactions at Intuit? And I suppose, is there that degree of infighting internally there as well, or is that slightly smoother?
That's a really great question. We have a very similar approach to what Nabil just described, a very blended experience. What we found is technology has been able to enable the type of experience we want to drive within the teams, where everyone knows the kind of content that they're driving within that space. On our shared channels, we do see a similar approach with the amount of care content coming in. So we do take the lion's share of the engagement in there, and a lot of the things that really are specific or what we're trying to do in marketing, they actually drive specific cues to be able to kind of route those questions where if we're doing a particular test or if we're trying to do some learnings or there's a particular campaign where my social agents are not upskilled for that and it's something they're wanting to learn fast, it goes directly to the right cue to be able to manage that. But what we found at QuickBooks is a lot of the content and questions coming in are really informational, and it's stuff that we have that trust and we have that connection with our marketing team where we will answer a lot of those posts because a lot of it's informational and we can get them to the right place in a blazingly fast speed. We've reached some really awesome numbers this past week on our engagement on social. We hit sub 8 minutes on our response time with over 98% responses, which is pretty incredible, being able to deliver that kind of rapid speed and being able to kind of manage those experiences from an end-to-end standpoint.
It certainly is, Mark, and in actual fact, we're going to come to that and how you, I suppose, structured and strategized to ensure that rapid speed in the second half of the webinar. Before we do, actually, before we move to our second poll, we just have a final question coming from Michael. I'm going to direct this to you, Frankie. Would there be, Michael asks, would there be some guidelines for cutting through the internal politics to optimize the alignment behind shared goals? Now, given your extensive experience in numerous corporate environments, Frankie, I'm sure you've seen quite a lot of internal politics. So what would your advice be for cutting through that to get behind a shared goal?
Well, that's a really good question. And what I would say is if you have one thing that you can sort of have in common. One of the things, from even just from a regular mass communications perspective, is humans interact better when you can find only even just one thing in common. So at Cox, I know what happens is there is, and maybe it sounds cliche, but there truly is a grassroots desire to serve the customer, which comes from most of our employees being customers. Their families, their friends are all customers in our market. So if we do a bad job, you don't just hear about it from the customer on the phone, you hear about it at the dinner table. Likewise, I'm sure if you're working at Microsoft or any of the other companies like that, if someone has a poor experience, they're just excited to tell you about it. And so being able to rally behind providing the best possible customer experience, if you can truly tap into that, that's the best way to get beyond the politics. And I know 6 years ago when we had our first conversations about providing corporate structure that I designed for social care, really the overarching social media structure was very enriched by our marketing team, who was our sponsor, getting behind the desire to have a great customer experience, and we would have the ownership of the social customer care live where we could provide the hours of operation. And in the beginning we went out trying to do just customer care, and public affairs would answer public affairs, and marketing would answer marketing. And quite honestly, marketing and public affairs weren't structured to have those hours of operation. So being collaborative and wanting to make sure the customer had the best experience is really what drove the guiding principles of here's where it's going to happen, and let's all collaborate together. So that's what I would recommend at any company, is find that common ground, which is usually the customer experience, and build from there.
As you say, aligning around the customer and really driving customer centricity throughout the company is certainly good advice, Frankie. We're actually going to move to our second poll now, and it's actually quite a nice one because it surrounds the theme and the foundation of something we've discussed throughout, and it really is based around the importance of understanding your customers and understanding your customer journey. Once again, you'll have 15 seconds to answer, and you can only select one answer. And that question is, do you feel your company has a 360-degree understanding of your customer, and indeed your customer journey as well, in relation to their support needs? Do you feel your company has a 360-degree understanding of your customer in relation to their support needs? I'd be interested to see whether we get another further 3% on yes completely, or indeed that drops off or increases. Just give you a few more seconds to answer that. Fantastic. Thank you very much to all who answered. And again, probably somewhat unsurprisingly, the bottom two being the most popular. We do have a tenth of our audience out there who do seem to have a perfect grip of indeed their customers, their customer wants, needs, and the entire experience in relation to their support needs. Again, this probably ties into the importance of the customer feeling as if they're understood and feeling as if they're known. Coming back to you, Frankie, how do companies go about generating this accurate and holistic picture of their customer, and therefore allowing them, I suppose, to deliver more contextualized support rather than a kind of one-size-fits-all approach?
That's another great question. And what I have seen across the different companies that I've interacted with in regards to customer experience, in the digital space, really comes down to three key parts that sort of are easy to remember. It's research, prepare, and listen. And by research, what I mean is understand and give your representatives an idea of who your customer is. For example, if you're 1-800-PET-MED, it's very likely that your customer is going to be a lover of pets. If you are working at Microsoft, all of your customers are probably using computers. So what do these people look like? What do they do? How do they spend their days? What are their experiences like? If your services are not working, is it a nuisance only to customers, or does it cost them money? Are you a B2B or a B2C? Those are all great things to sort of research in advance and provide that information to your agents. because from a communications perspective, the first key is always to know who your audience is, who are you talking to. And then the next one is if you can help your agents to prepare for the interaction. I know that all of us are customers of someone, and it's frustrating when we are reaching out for our support or our service, and for example, maybe someone tries to sell you, a service that you already have, and you think, well, I pay you every month. It's very frustrating that you don't even know what I'm buying from you. So it's really important to give the representatives the tools to be able to sort of look and understand who is this particular person that I'm talking to, what do they subscribe to or what have they purchased from us. So be prepared for that particular interaction. And then it's about listening, not just for what is it specifically that the customer is saying their issue is or their question is, but also to listen for the emotion that's behind their response. Are they sounding frustrated? Potentially, to use a cost example, if there's someone whose internet is not working, if they're much more frustrated than what you're used to for internet not working, maybe there's something more behind that. Is this a repeat issue that, or maybe they're frustrated with our brand for several issues that they've had with us, or perhaps they're frustrated because the internet's not working, there's a test that they're supposed to take, and maybe they didn't study very well. So those are ways that you can connect to that particular customer because you're listening to understand, ask questions around that, and then engage, right? And you can scale that, right? You can scale that, listen, and then ask, and then engage with who you're talking to.
And in actual fact, Frankie, you tee up my next question almost perfectly in terms of the importance of listening and I suppose translating what you're hearing, what you're seeing into action to better inform your future care operations, the way in which your agents are interacting. I'm going to come to you, Mark. I suppose, how do you go about generating actionable insight from everything that you are hearing and seeing on social, and making sure that does indeed turn into action rather than just sitting in some kind of data silo somewhere?
That's a really great question. I think it goes back to the previous question a little bit as well, where we have a pretty robust voice of the customer program, and I think one of the big advantages of having that program is it really synthesizes those data points across the ecosystem with all the different channels we have, whether it be voice, chat, or social, and being able to kind of pull all those listening posts together in one key way, and being able to kind of tell, this is our customer, these are the personas, this is the experiences that they're after. Another big piece of that is we do a lot of Incite testing. One part of that is what was just mentioned on how we use some of those social insights. But I think another big part of that is we have a culture of doing follow me homes, which is kind of exciting, where you actually see, it's one thing to kind of get the data points, but I think it's another thing when you actually see the experience in the customer's hands and walking them through and understanding, okay, go to Facebook, reach out for support. What does that experience look like, and how are we simplifying that experience, or are we making it more difficult for you? When you're looking at self-help and the other aspects of social, it's in the same light, making that experience simple, easy to understand, and then that fits the different personas so that they can reach out in the channel of choice.
And you actually touch upon an interesting theme as well, Mark. I suppose not only the importance of understanding your customers so you can provide more contextualized support and actually make them feel as if you are responding to them as an individual, but I suppose actually making them feel as if you are an individual as well, and not just a kind of collection of different agents and different people. So coming over to you, Nabil, how have you guys helped develop I suppose, an approach where you are seen as a kind of one-to-one care provider rather than a many-to-one, if that makes sense?
I think it does. So personalizing the relationship becomes really important. I think there was a point that Frankie was mentioning of understanding your customer goes a long way to making your customer feel like they are beyond a transactional and you actually have a relationship rather than transactional equation with them of something's broken, I call, it's fixed. The next time I call, you have no idea who I am. In a world where services are a primary way of interacting with customers, there's a higher expectation from our customers that we do know them, that we understand that they're an Office 365 subscriber and they're also an Xbox Live Gold subscriber, and they just upgraded Windows. And we're frankly not there yet. That's a core challenge for us, is developing that view of the customer in a way that's accessible to our agents so that we can actually think about the customer's overall needs beyond just the question that they're having today. Because often we found, as we've done our research on support needs for our customers, that the question that they're having is not always the broader solution that they're trying to solve for. So the more we know about them, the greater customized support that we can offer that customer and the better solutions that we can recommend. So it's a virtuous cycle where the customer gets a benefit out of it by being known and getting a more personalized experience, and we get greater benefit because we're either increasing the sentiment, the positive sentiment the customer has for us, or increasing the total spend that a customer may have by recommending another solution or finding that gap of saying, hey, you know, you actually have this, you're not getting the most out of your subscription here. Did you know that you can also be streaming to other PCs in your house from your Xbox? So that delight factor of getting to another feature within the product space, it's a goal for us. We'd like to be able to have that with every customer every time.
And as you say, that delight factor of being able to access another service or another product, but also of being approached to by the company as an individual, as a human. And related to this, and actually there's quite a few questions coming through in relation to my next question. I want to come over to you, Mark. Really, as many companies look to scale up, how do you maintain that personalization? And I suppose, do personalization and scale have to be inversely related?
I think that's a really great question. You know, as you build the scale, you know, what I've seen across different companies is this, you know, when you look at companies first jumping on social care versus the experience that you're starting to see today, it was very much, I can't keep up with this. And so you start seeing these copy and pasted type of answers where, you know, each answer looks exactly the same as the one before, and a lot of it was just getting people offline to PM rather than really keep them on there and having the conversation. And for me, one of the things that I've seen is that, you know, scalability is achieved through, you know, two parts. One, clearly making sure that you're mapping out to the customer benefits so you can know the, you know, how many customers and just basic forecasting for that. And then the second piece of that is really being able to understand, is your training scalable? Are you able to reach those masses in a large effort by being able to deliver those one-on-one trainings? So what we've taken a look at is, you know, the voice and tone trainings that we, and the other experience type trainings that we give to our agent level groups are, how are you making sure that they, number one, understand who our customer is? I think it's one of those basic things that we forget, and that really helps build that authenticity. When they understand, you know, particularly in our space, these are small businesses. This could be the guy down the street from you who you stop in and grab, you know, grab a drink after work with, or this could be, you know, someone who, you know, does your you know, dry cleaning. It doesn't matter. These are small businesses, and helping them really quite understand that really helps build that experience so that they feel that each interaction is authentic. They know that they're actually solving for that individual customer, and then building that out, you know, with scalability for the, you know, reaching those masses with keeping it authentic really comes down to telling the right story. What's most important to your business? Authenticity or contact reduction, or just getting them offline? And I think a lot of that is the customer experience, you know, gets worse as you try to rush them through that. So keeping that authenticity with also, you know, building that scalability function in there is really it's kind of a battle at times with the business units, but it really comes down to, you know, telling the right story.
And then interesting on the back of that, Mark, I mean, how How have you tackled that, both internally and externally, as indeed you, Intuit, push out your care operations globally? I know over the last couple of years, you're certainly looking to try and take over the world in that regard. So how do you balance that as you move into different geographic locations, different contextual areas as well?
I think a lot of that goes down to scaling out the experience, and one of the things we found is we've gone with a very much a fixed, flexible, free type of model where there's certain things across the ecosystem where we want to have that similarities, particularly around voice and tone, experiences. This is what our brand means, and this is how we show up. But a lot of that, contextual type of experience comes down to you want to make sure that it's authentic within the region. So me putting out and talking about football in the U.S. is very different from Jack talking about football naturally, and so it would not go off on the same light. Two very different sports, with the same meaning, same word, different spellings, but how that comes across, to different groups really. It really can kind of become a thorn if you don't do it right, and so that's where we find that we want to make sure that brand experience is solid across the board, but that local tone and voice is everything, right? And if you're not delivering on that, then you're not going to be able to reach scalability within those global regions, because it just feels like a U.S.-centric or wherever you're based centric type of experience.
Fantastic. Again, there's loads of questions coming in, very much surrounding the kind of routing procedure. So I'm going to actually come over to you, Frankie. And in your experience, how do teams internally determine which team is right for which response? I know we spoke about it briefly earlier in terms of social care operations versus perhaps community managers. But as a whole, what do you see as the most effective principles when it comes to a company's routing procedure?
Yeah, sure. So I will tell you that when I look at it holistically, I see that there are probably two approaches that bubble to the top. Number one is technology driven. If you have the technology to route posts interdepartmentally and you're all on, sort of the same technology. We mentioned Sprinkler earlier. Sprinkler is one that is good at having, marketing and customer care and public affairs all on the same tool. So in that way, it's easy for companies to say, if a customer asks this type of question, then route it to customer care. But if a customer asks this other type of question, go ahead and send it to public affairs. And that's kind of what you hear people trying to do, which is fine. It can get complicated. And when I look at things from a customer perspective, another option that's not talked about very often, but is the one that we saw implemented at Cox, is having customer care who has hours of operations answer all questions. If a customer is asking a question, customer care is answering that question, and that can be, what channel is my favorite program on right now, to, what's your position on net neutrality in the FCC's latest ruling. So clearly the latter question would be one that our public affairs team would want to answer, but customer care is sitting there waiting to answer your post. So the way that we strategize that is, I said, let's have the relationship, the connection, and the pathways predefined so that at 2 o'clock in the morning when that customer care rep on the front line is being asked that question, there's no panic or confusion or being scared about what to say. The agent is comfortable, and comfortable agents make comfortable customers. So how that happens is you predefine, public affairs, if we get this question, what should we say? Can we answer it before we talk to you, or do you want us to ring you in the middle of the night? We'll ask you the question, you answer, and then our representative will respond to the customer. So that's a way that if you're a smaller company, or if you have fewer resources, a lot of companies are trying to, be very cost effective for their customers, keep their costs down. So maybe you don't have the ability to have a very large social media department. That's a way that as long as you're making your strategy ahead of time, you can really make it work. And maybe, maybe 75% of your queries are really more around something a community manager should answer, and only 25% of the time do you get a real care inquiry. So maybe you flip that. Maybe the community manager does everything until there's a care query, and then there's a defined process where you can very quickly get that resolved and taken care of for the agent. So there are many ways to do it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Frankie. And I just had a look at the time, and I know we're rapidly running through, so I'm going to try and get through as many questions that have been sent through, and there's a lot of them, which is fantastic. And the next one, from Marie Anixad, is actually quite an interesting one, and how you go about interacting and I suppose educating your customer base. And she asks, if we are currently not getting any customer care questions through social media, but we want to use social as an avenue for our customers to ask, how do we begin to show our customers that we are available there to answer their questions and queries? I'm going to come over to you, Nabil. Now, I know you indeed do already get a lot of queries, a lot of kind of potential questions coming through social, but indeed, if you weren't, how would you go about educating and instructing your customer base that is a place that indeed that they can be serviced?
That's a good question. Actually, there's some real-world examples that we went through with this. The Microsoft Helps handle on Twitter, which is a core entry point for us for any customer needing assistance with anything from Microsoft. It acts as both a concierge and clearinghouse for questions, often care and support related, but a lot of general questions as well. That was honestly a gentleman named Bill Dean, who really, when Twitter first started, believed that it was going to be an interaction channel for companies and for our customers. So he believed in it, started it very early, and the growth of that from a volume perspective has sort of told the story of he was right, but getting us there and letting customers know about it, I think your best method are, where are you engaging with customers already? The website, your web presence, your Facebook pages, those areas where your customers are already interacting with you, you can actually promote new channels. And active promotion, if it's an investment that you're making a larger investment in, I think the positioning and active promotion of it as a channel, and potentially even providing a value prop there, like increased hours. A great way to start social media as a new channel for you when you're not getting traffic there. Figure out gaps where customers would like you to be present on phone, and maybe extend the hours above and beyond what you do on phone as a way of presenting that channel. Hey, our phone support is of course there to help you until 8 p.m. Our Twitter support is available 24/7 or until midnight Central Time every day. So please reach out to us, and we're happy to help you there. So use those channels where customers know about you already, and just pump and boost the ones that you actually want to be promoting.
And I suppose that rings true for in relation to kind of self-help and peer-to-peer help as well, Nabil. I know a lot of the kind of questions that people were sending through in the build-up to the webinar was this approach to trying to make I suppose the customer experience as effortless as possible, and that what you can do to preempt potential issues and high volume rates. So just to follow up, how have you guys used social to generate, I suppose, quicker and more engaging methods of self-help and peer-to-peer help as well?
Well, increasingly we're thinking of our social channel as that concierge, and being able to direct customers to either great content that's already out there, or a channel like we want to evaluate the customers coming in with a difficult installation issue, for example. We know that we're not going to have an optimal experience on social. So what we want to do is identify that customer, get them into the channel that we think they're going to have the best experience with, whether that's assisted in the case of install, or if it's a known problem, recommending the piece of content that'll solve for them, and getting them there as easily and quickly as possible so that they can sort of get out of that problem or question state and back on with the rest of their lives. So I think that's probably the key that we think about it.
I'm just going to race through the final couple of questions here as we approach to the end of the webinar. So, Mark, coming to you, I'll save the best till last. What are the key, and this is coming from Ann Fisher, what are the key social KPIs that you use in relation to your social care operations?
That's a great question. The key ones that we take a look at are, first off, we look at response time, because one of the benefits we found is that the faster we engage, the higher the sentiment has risen. And then that leads to the second one is social sentiment as well. We want to make sure we're kind of tracking that along that path to understand, one, are we making an impact? Is this the right impact? And what we found is the faster we're able to resolve, the higher delight factor comes into that. So that increases that social sentiment, and in theory, that'll help drive NPS as well.
Fantastic. And actually, coming over to you, Frankie, and a nice, easy one here. What does it mean to be best class in relation to social servicing? What are your thoughts on that?
So best in class, I'll give you my utopian vision of that, and I don't know that anybody is necessarily quite there yet, but when we, the local manager of the social media team, and I set out to explain to a customer support rep what does awesome social media look like, what I said is effortless, and I said, wouldn't it be cool if you were on Twitter and you could see that someone with maybe a sort of unique name said, wow, my cable is acting kind of funny. I see all these lines on my TV. What if you could figure out who they were, and without asking them a single question, you could push a button to send a hit to their box, and the first thing you said to them was, try it now. And I can't think of a different or a better way to explain that what the future of customer care, regardless of what digital channel you're talking about, the future of customer care in my eyes looks like that. Try it now. Don't ask me what my name is or where I'm from, or ask me to spell my address again. Just fix it. And you can't do it all the time, but the moments, the times that you can make it as close to that experience as possible without creeping somebody out. I do caveat that. Let's not scare people. But insofar as you can do that, that's the power. That's the future of social and digital interactions.
Live an effortless experience, but don't be creepy. I think.
Yeah, don't be creepy.
Very, very important. And again, another easy one for you, Nabil, just to finish off. As we look to the future, really, what do you see any, I suppose, notable changes or opportunities on the horizon? What's going to be top of mind for you in 2017 in relation to social servicing?
I think bots are a big thing. They're the next technology echelon for us, and they have a lot of really great potential of blending that idea of self-service with a little bit more natural language interaction. So I think you'll see more and more companies experimenting and trying the equivalent of chatbots on social media to deliver information effectively. It's also a great first line of defense on really common questions that customers may have that at scale just don't make as much sense to have these brief interactions. For example, a service outage on cable or PlayStation or Xbox. If we know about the service outage and somebody's able to easily hit us on Twitter or the channel of their choice, and we go, yep, here's the service status, and if you want to know more information, here's where you can go. I think that that's an improved interaction. So as customers' attention spans decrease as well, we need to figure out ways of having these high-quality interactions at large scale and not going through that entire, hey, let's get 17 pieces of information just to answer the simple question for you. So that's absolutely where we're looking at in the coming year or two.
On what's lovely, Bill, I mean, that has been flagged by much of our corporate community as well. Again, that we have a whole session on that at the Customer Service Summit coming up in November, which is great to see. Thank you so much, Nabil, for that answer, and of course all your answers, as well as to you, Frankie and Mark. Unfortunately, given the time, it is now the end of the webinar and end of questions. Apologies for running over a little bit. We've had some fantastic engagement and interaction with today's discussion. Loads of questions coming in. Apologies if I was unable to get through to yours. Again, we had lots and lots coming through. Of course, I'd like to thank our speakers for today, Mark, Frankie, and Nabil, for their insights and contributions. Before everyone leaves to get really what is a well-deserved coffee, we will be sending out the recording of this webinar next week, so no need to worry if you missed any parts of the discussion. What's more, if you do still have a question for our speakers, they will actually be joining us in November in person, along with 30 other senior executives in the customer service space from many of the brands that you can see on your screen now. I will also send through a link to download the brochure for the event. It would be fantastic to check that out and see really what those brands and many other brands who are joining or attending have identified as the key discussion points and important areas to be looked at as we approach 2017. So it'd be fantastic if you can take a look at that. Thank you once again to our speakers for all their insights. Thank you once again to you for joining us.